So today's title of my lecture is United We Stand. These are the disclosures. I am involved in the two stem cell trials related to the COVID-19 infection. One is sponsored by the California Institute of Regenerative Medicine and Cellularity Incorporated, and the other one is Pluristem. I will be talking about these trials today. And I called my lecture United We Stand because divided we fall. We live in a very divided society, rich, poor, women, men, you name it. And the current pandemic did not help the situation to make it better. With social distancing rules, we are even further from each other than ever before. As a physician, I always thought that in the face of a disease and death, we are all equal. As an American physician Samuel Johnson said, disease generally begins at equality that death completes. But does it? If we look at this distribution of mortality among Californians, it's mostly the older people who essentially assume all the mortality. But remember March of 2020 when we realized that the disease is coming to our neighborhoods? I was mortified. I was so scared for my children. But then, looking at the fatality rate of children, I felt the greatest relief. They are less likely to be affected. But then I looked at the other age extreme, my parents. What will happen to them? And as you can see, the majority of the people who have been affected are people above 60. This picture, recently taken in Northern California, symbolized so much. Death rampage through elderly community. And as the fire is rampaging through this senior center. And as we realize that barrier precautions like masks are very important in prevention of COVID-19, what can we do when these measures fail? Of course, we all have our immunity, which separates us into individual organisms to the point that we cannot transplant anything to another human being without this new organ being rejected, unless we are using medications. So we're divided again into separate immune systems. But these days, since science allows us to administer some medications and transplant different tissues, essentially we can unite humans in our quest to find the disease. So how about a possibility to share our immune response? I am fortunate to be involved in the stem cell clinical trial, which help us share the immune system capabilities. But a little bit of background. We have different mechanisms in our defense response to bacteria and viruses. And one of the mechanisms is adaptive immunity. And that's why the vaccine is very important, because it's very specific, very effective. That's how we eliminated polio. And when we give a vaccine or the person encounter a virus through multiple steps that require several weeks, we will eventually develop an immune response that will allow us not to, for example, catch polio. And this mechanism essentially leads to creation of antibodies and killer cells. But as I said, this mechanism is not available right now for COVID-19. But we also have innate immunity. As we all studied at school, these are the macrophages that are capable of engulfing the viruses or bacteria and digesting it to something not dangerous to our body. What not everyone realizes, there are also other cells. It's called natural killer cells. These cells survey our bodies daily. That's why we don't develop cancers, and that's why we don't develop diseases from some viruses that we'd never encountered before. They kill everything that don't look like our own body. And these natural killer cells are part of this immunity. That's why a company, Cellularity, developed a new product that they called Sync-001. And these are natural killer cells that were harvested from placentas and transplanted into patients suffering from COVID-19. This trial is sponsored by California Institute of Regenerative Medicine, and our expectations are that these transplanted cells will eliminate COVID-19 virus by killing the cells affected by the virus. The overall design of this trial is essentially it's a phase 1 study. It means that we will be looking for adverse events. That's how we start in research, with the phase 1. And the first phase is usually a small number of patients, and in this trial, we will enroll 14 patients with COVID-19 infection. And these patients will be followed for up to 12 months. So these patients will be between 18 and 72 years old who are symptomatic from their COVID-19 infections like fever, cough, and chest X-ray findings that consistent with the pneumonia from COVID-19 infection. And what we will be assessing is essentially the adverse events. But there is always a possibility that we will be able to advance to phase 2 if we don't have any adverse events and if the efficacy will be at least suggested by the result of this trial, we will go into the phase 2. And in phase 2, we are planning to enroll 86 patients. And these patients will be essentially monitored again for adverse events, but now we will be aiming for efficacy. And through doing serial tests from mucous membranes, like nasopharyngeal swabs, we will find out how fast we eliminate the virus from the body. But there are different situations. Right now, we're talking about the situation where the immune response of the patients is not sufficient to clear the virus fast enough from the body. Another company, Pluristem, essentially developed a different approach. They use the product called PLX-PAD. This is a different type of cells. They are mesenchymal-like cells, again from the placenta, but it will be a phase 2 study. In this study, I'm excited to say that we will be using this drug in severely affected patients, because sometimes what happens is that the body of a patient reacts so much that it damages not only the cells affected by the virus, but also normal cells, to the point where the body cannot regenerate that tissue that was affected. So as a background, we need the defense mechanisms to be in check with our ability to regenerate the tissue there. And in these patients, the tissue is being destroyed so fast that it leads to more damage than good. So essentially, in these patients, it's important to put our immune system in check and kind of slow it down. And in this trial, we'll be studying exactly these stem cells that are helping us to do that. And it's a randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trial where we will enroll 140 patients, and we will observe them for 12 months. They will be between 40 and 80 years old. And as I already said, they will be severely affected on mechanical ventilation, admitted to the ICU. And we hope that we will achieve efficacy defined by the number of days the patient spends on the mechanical ventilation. If we are able to shorten the time that the patient is on the mechanical ventilation, it means the drug works. And I would like to say that all this effort, all these clinical trials, where we are capable of doing, because as here at UCI, we together as researchers, with the researchers from these companies and the researchers in the whole country, we unite together and fight from this disease. And another effort we as taxpayers can contribute in this situation is essentially 5 years ago, California citizens decided and created California Institute of Regenerative Medicine. And it's our effort where we together essentially contribute to the development of science. And that's why we feel that it's a very important time in life, in our lives, where we all can contribute on different levels to help to defy this disease and defend ourselves from many other diseases that are coming through their mutual common efforts. And that's why united we stand. Thank you.